All right, sorry. I hope you guys aren't sick of me, and I know I'm between us and happy hour. I promise I will hopefully provide you guys some tips. But so I'm here today to share how I've established and scaled the revenue enablement team at Andela this year. Hopefully provide some of you who are embarking on the, dare I say, courageous journey of starting an enablement function with a few tips. So to introduce myself, slides aren't moving, by the way. The slides aren't moving. To introduce myself, my name is Carly, and I'm head of revenue operations and enablement at Andela. I'm also the co-host, shameless plug, of a mini web series called The Enablement Brew, where my friend Malvina El-Sayeg and I, who's head of enablement at Reach Desk, we talk shop on all sorts of enablement topics, kind of treat it like a talk show. And you guys can find us on LinkedIn. So I joined Andela in January, and before that I spent 2.5 years at a company called Axiom. We're in the legal industry, like I said earlier, where I ultimately led the sales enablement function there, where I started as an enablement manager. Prior to that, I worked at a vacation rental property management company in the US called Vacasa, and I was doing a lot of enablement work, but didn't really know that it was enablement. I didn't know that the term existed. I was doing like sales L&D, but then a lot of like working with the head of sales on strategy, working with basically a RevOps person as well. So all in all, I've been working in the enablement space for about 8 years now. So today I'm going to talk about the two phases, so establishing and scaling. I'm talking about them as distinct activities, but they are absolutely intertwined. But before I do that, let me talk about Andela, because many of you probably haven't heard about us. So at Andela, we believe that brilliance is evenly distributed throughout the world, but opportunity is not. Our mission is to connect brilliance with opportunities irrespective of race, gender, and geography. So sounds pretty ambitious, but how do we actually do that? So we're the premier talent marketplace to connect with vetted, remote-ready technologists from emerging markets. We were founded in 2014 with the idea to train brilliant, untapped talent in Africa to become software engineers, and then connect them with the world's greatest technology companies through the idea of remote work. Since then, we've raised nearly $400 million and most recently raising $200 million in funding in our Series E led by SoftBank, valued at $1.2 billion. So in a world where finding technical talent, well, really any talent, is becoming increasingly competitive, we've helped over 200 companies build world-class engineering teams, allowing them to ship code faster than ever before. So let's dive in. So one of the most common questions I see on LinkedIn and various enablement communities is, when should we hire our first enablement leader? Or it can often be described as, how many reps should I have before I hire enablement? I will be incredibly blunt here, but the answer is bring enablement in as soon as possible. But if that doesn't help get you your leadership buy-in, here are a couple questions. So it should be pretty clear that enablement is not a fad, as we can see today. It's here to stay. So if you're a head of sales in the audience, or you're in the audience hoping to establish an enablement function, ask yourself and your leadership team these 3 questions. Do you know how your reps describe your company to prospects? Are you confident in their pitch? Do you know how long it takes to ramp a new rep? And is that good enough? Are your reps consistently winning competitive deals? If the answer is no, or I don't know to these questions, you need sales enablement. Simple as that. Don't take it from me, though. So I've asked, it's pretty obvious. You need enablement, right? I'm in enablement. Please hire me. So I've asked some sales leaders that I've worked with why they found value in enablement. So here's our former chief revenue officer at Andela. I've worked with him at 2 organizations now. He says enablement should be one of the first functions that a growing revenue org invests in. While it may seem easy to drive growth by hiring 20 account executives, we talked about this as a lever, add more headcount, give them a bigger quota. The smarter and more cost-effective way to drive growth is by building a high-performing enablement function that can make your current team of AEs even 10% more effective. And then another one, he's our current senior director of SMB sales. Hiring the right sales team is only half the battle. Enabling your sales team with the right resources, training, and coaching is the second half. And that's why I strongly believe that in order to meet the full potential of your team, having an enablement function is a no-brainer. And this leader is like my buddy, right? He's the one that I built all of the enablement that I've built so far as like a test case within our SMB team. And now our enterprise team is like, why do they have all that cool stuff? We want it too. So I can't remember who said it earlier, but definitely find like your friend in the organization, and that's Pervez for me. So you've gotten buy-in from leadership, hooray. You feel like this. It's amazing. Everyone's like, yes, I love enablement, great idea. But if we are not careful, this can turn to this really quickly. It can be an absolute disaster. So once the word has gotten out that enablement is in your organization, I can promise you that projects will start to pile onto your plate, and it'll feel very chaotic. It'll feel like the room is on fire. You won't have any idea what's going on. So in order to combat that, you should be writing an enablement charter. So avoid being the land of broken things. At my previous organization, enablement was created because there really wasn't a team to handle all these random things that needed to get done. And so it literally was the land of broken things. So you want to avoid that. And by writing a charter, it allows you to not be distracted by the endless requests that are coming across your desk. And it will help you stay focused on the mission at hand, which is to establish a world-class enablement function at your organization. So I spent the first 4 to 6 weeks at Andela talking to all of our client-facing reps, our sales leaders, and assessing what was currently in place. And then I wrote our charter for 2021. So every good charter should have, I think, 5 main components. The mission and vision, what do you want to do and how are you going to do it? Audience to me is probably one of the most important ones, especially if you're a smaller enablement team. So I have been a solo practitioner, I've been a team of 2, and you can't support everyone, especially if you have a large organization. So it's really important in your charter to say, we will support SDRs and quota-carrying account executives. We would love to support everyone else if you give us more headcount and budget, wink, wink, right? So make sure you explicitly say who's in scope and who's out of scope with your enablement program. Key objectives, I'm gonna go over a couple of mine in a second. Metrics for success, I think we all heard like the greatest one this morning, Kunal, the sales velocity. I'm literally gonna go put that into my charter. You don't need anything else, just do sales velocity. And then your plan, how are you actually gonna do these things? So here are some of the objectives I had at the beginning of the year. So document our internal processes. This was like the first thing we did. And actually by doing this, we reduced the sales cycle time in SMB by 10 days, simply by documenting and finding inefficiencies and making it just go quicker. We had 9 sales stages in Salesforce, and our VP of sales could not tell me the difference between a couple of the stages, and I said, we need to make this more simple. We did, reduced it by 10 days. Increase client-facing selling time. I think Laura talked about that. Like, that is probably one of the most important things you can do. Give time back to sales. Have them spend their time actually doing meaningful work with clients. Partner with product marketing and tech, and our tech and product teams to make sure that we're all proficient in industry knowledge. So we have the benefit of, we're in the tech space, and our core personas that we sell to are chief product officers, VP of engineering. And so we asked our chief product officer and VP of engineering, like, what do they look for? What are their challenges? And basically had them train up our team on the industry. Implement a sales enablement platform. So we did this in partnership with marketing, and that's something that we did pretty early on. Establish formalized onboarding and academy programs. And then finally, partner with RevOps. to provide sales directors with coaching frameworks. So we're still in the process of doing this and building out like the right reporting. But once you have the good reporting in place, then you can basically provide those like one-on-one guides that I was talking about earlier to managers to say like, hey, this is how you can manage and coach your team with the data that's readily available to you. So from these objectives, I outlined our roadmap and organized it into 2 different initiatives. So building enablement capability, which is basically owning all communications to the revenue team. So like Laura and Lucy are doing at Vodafone, we do the same thing. We centralize all the communications. I send out a morning brew every Monday. I lead the weekly stand-up with our revenue team where we go over numbers and initiatives that are going on. Reviewing existing services, ensuring consistent touch points, that sort of thing. The other initiative was to provide enablement services. So I kind of boil it down to training, coaching, and content services. What does that mean for each? So again, if your organization doesn't know what enablement means, like this is the best way to kind of show them, like this is what we mean by a training service, a content service, and a coaching service. So it can take a lot of time to establish a highly functioning enablement team, and which is why it's important to have some quick wins, like in the first quarter or 2 that you're there. And we heard about that earlier today as well. So one of the questions that I asked earlier was, how confident are you in your rep's pitch? And Pervez, the sales leader that I pointed out earlier, he actually came to me and said, our reps are not talking about one of our core differentiators in discovery calls. They're shying away from it. I can't figure out why. We did a training with the product team earlier this quarter, but they're just still not talking about it. It's just not sticking. So I went into Gong, our conversational intelligence tool, had a tracker all built out, and then I analyzed in the 6 months, the first 6 months of the year, what were the data points here. So on average, 39% of our discovery calls, our reps were talking about this differentiator. So I want you guys to pay attention to Daisy and Luigi. I used Mario Kart characters to protect my reps' names. So look at Daisy and Luigi. So what I did is I created a 30-minute certification and basically retaught them on the process. How do we assess our talent? This was our key differentiator. Had the sales leader actually share the pitch with the slides from the pitch deck himself to see a good example. And then we used calls from Gong to show reps hey, this is a good example of this in a meeting. Here's the questions that clients ask. And then we put together some talking points in a 1-pager. So, hey, these are the key differentiators of our assessment process. And here are the common questions you're going to get asked. And it's all in 1 page in Showpad, easy to access. So we did this. We had 100% completion on the certification, which was great. There wasn't very many reps, so I'd hope we'd get 100%. But as you can see, this had a really big impact, not only on the team level, which we went up by 10% on the team average, but Luigi went up to 100% of the time. And I took the data from 3 months after the program. So 3 months after the certification, I looked at all of his discovery calls. 100% of the time, he's talking about our talent assessment approach. And Daisy, who was a new hire at the time of the certification, she improved by 27%. So Luigi improved by 35, Daisy improved by 27, team improved by 10% on average. So this was a really great way for us to show that, yes, enablement's here to build a multi-year strategic business function, but we can do things really quickly for you to just make an impact and demonstrate that just a little bit of focus and support can reap benefits for your team. So once you've established the function, it's time to scale. But how do you structure your team? So to me, I look at structuring a team 3 different ways. And the first one is by role in the organization. So you have enablement managers dedicated to SDRs, account executives, account managers, CSMs, what have you. Or you could do it by region. So EMEA, APAC, North America, Latin America. So wherever your business operates, you can have someone dedicated to that whole region. Or you could have people who specialize in areas of enablement. So your sales methodology manager or someone dedicated to onboarding, like I talked about, new product training. So at Andela, I basically did a combination of these things. So I have an SDR enablement manager, sales enablement, account management enablement, and then I have someone dedicated to programs, and the programs are both onboarding, but then our academy programs as well. So I've hired 4 enablers this year, and I will be honest, it's really hard to find enablement talent. It is a very hot market at the moment, as I'm sure we all can sympathize with. So if you're looking to hire and grow your team, leverage the different communities that there are for enablement. There are a ton. Sales Enablement Collective is one, Pavilion, or formerly known as Revenue Collective, Sales Enablement Pro, Women in Sales Enablement, or WISE. There's the Sales Enablement Squad Slack group. So if you are looking to hire someone in enablement, post in those communities, basically, or try and join those communities and get your job out there. But also post on LinkedIn and share why you've decided to invest in enablement. I think that's probably the most important one. Especially if you're trying to hire someone who has a lot of enablement experience, they're going to want to know why you want enablement. Is it just because it's a fad and everyone else is doing it? To me, that's a big red flag. I don't necessarily want to go work at an organization that doesn't know what enablement means and doesn't know what the impact it can have on their organization, because I know I'm going to have to climb Mount Everest as soon as I walk in the door. I want them to at least know what enablement means. So when you share on LinkedIn, share these are the problems we're having and we're looking for someone to come in and help us fix these things. Also look internally. So both at Axiom and at Andela, I've brought someone in internally. Emma's sitting here. Emma was a BDR, and I convinced her, hey, you probably don't want to be a BDR forever. So why don't you come to the enablement team? And she's now a blossoming enablement manager. I'm so proud of her. But also, if you can't find anyone internally, and you're having a hard time finding people with enablement experience, find people with experience of the person or the type of role that they're going to support. So Kieran on my team was in sales, and he was a sales leader and has wanted to get into enablement. Absolutely. I actually have never hired someone who has an enablement background. I've always hired people who have field experience, and then I'm happy to coach and train people on the world of enablement, because I think it's a great way to get buy-in from your stakeholders if you've actually carried the bag just like they have. And then when it comes to compensation for enablement, it's really hard to figure out what you should pay us enablers. So Sales Enablement Collective actually published a really good compensation report that, for the first time in my career, I've actually looked at it and thought, okay, this is accurate. I'm actually making what I should be. And so it was really good directionally for me as I was going to recruit and hire new people on my team, what I should be paying. So I'd absolutely check that out. So to summarize, I want to reiterate that implementing a high-functioning enablement program can take years. You should not expect an enablement leader to come in and completely transform your organization overnight. Just like if you were in sales, you wouldn't want your manager to say, you are at $0 now and you need to be at $1 million by next quarter. That could be really scary. So give your enablement team some time to actually get in there, assess the situation, and start building. So these are my 3 phases of enablement from a scaling perspective. There's the foundation. So you're documenting everything in this foundational phase. You are building your onboarding program. You're providing quick wins. Phase 2 is leveling up. So you're building coaching programs tied back to the skills frameworks that you've built in onboarding. You're providing managers the discussion guides, the toolkits, and then you're building academy programs. So we're building an SDR academy program basically to it's a career progression strategy for our junior talent. So we want our SDRs to go elsewhere in the organization. We want to retain that talent. It's an investment for us. And so let's train them on how to become an account executive or an account manager, or maybe on the RevOps team or marketing while they're in seat. And we do that at the 12-month mark. And so it's a good way to basically groom your internal talent to becoming successful salespeople. And then lastly, phase 3, I see this as mastery, so providing not only just a basic product certification, but applying like the university like leveling system, so you're 100, 200, 300 level certified to all the different products that you offer. And so you can actually see like how strong your sales team are in the different products that you sell based on the certifications that they achieve. And then also incorporating personalized enablement. So a self-service culture to upskilling is kind of how I think about this. So if someone knows that they aren't strong in something, you have the content available for them to seek it out and actually take that program or that course to actually improve their skills, or their manager can help them do that. So, but where is Andela? I'd say we are right here. So we've accomplished a lot since I joined in January, but we still have a long way to go. I finally just finished hiring for the team like 2 weeks ago. So we are, in the foundation phase. We're getting really close to the level up phase. And I think by hopefully this time next year, we'll get closer to mastery. But that's it. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen, as I'm literally the last one before happy hour. So, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or anything. I love to chat enablement, but I think we do have time if anyone has any questions, or if you just want to drink. Yeah, go ahead.
How often do you revisit your enablement charter? Is it quarterly, yearly?
It's a good question. So the question was, how often do you revisit the enablement charter? Personally, I don't do it often enough. Like, that's something that I need to get better at. I published it at the beginning of the year. I revisited in July. I probably should do it quarterly. So I'm actually thinking about, for 2022, just building a charter for H1, and then that will force myself to have to build one for H2. You could plan a whole year, but our business changes so much that I really can only think about the next 6 months, and even that's a long time for us. So I would say quarterly is probably best, and something I could teach myself to do, actually. Good question. Any other questions? Great. All right, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Carly.